Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Um, how many of you are happy to be here? Is my slides up? How many of you are happy to be here? I'm not seeing everyone's hand up. What happened to the people on the side? Anyways, my name is Ayotomide Babalola, like everyone mentioned, or like the introducer mentioned, right? I'm a software engineer. I'm also a good developer expert for Flutter and that. And today I'm going to be talking about an interesting topic that I've been exploring for a bit of time. And the title is Flutter Widgets with Sixth Sense. How many of us are Flutter developers? Flutter developers. Wow. That's like, okay. Okay, I think to an extent we have a very good number. Um, how many of you have tried building anything interesting with like generative AI? How many of you have tried exploring that topic? Anybody? Okay, we have like a few hands. All right, then I'll just go ahead and then talk about my topic today. So the human mind have five senses, but there's something we always call sixth sense, right? In which we define as adaptability, predictability, and understandability, right? So based off my talk, great applications would always feel like they have a sixth sense, meaning they can adapt, they can predict, and they can understand. And that's the future we are going to today. Let's move to the next one. So the idea is, what if your applications can read your mind? Okay, it seems not everyone is following. Chairman, boss, yeah, please. All right. What if your UI could read your mind, right? What if your UI can read your mind? The problem with UIs today, every screen we have is pre-built, meaning your designer designs like a UI screen, and then every flow is hard coded, and every user gets the same experience, which makes your application feel rigid and not flexible enough to an extent. And that is a problem that we, as developer, we've been trying to figure out a way to solve, right? And having widgets with six sense kind of like solve the problem. So I define static UI as something I call dead UI, meaning your UI is static. It doesn't do like, it's not flexible, and then it is dead, meaning it just does what you tell it to do. So nowadays, applications are evolving, right? And I don't know if anybody heard about Gen UI that Flutter just released. My Flutter developers in the house, please raise your hand if you. Okay. Um, so I had a different idea for this topic when I was working on it. I had like a different plan because I had to build like something from scratch. Then I believe 3 days ago, Flutter released something. They introduced a Gen UI SDK. So what the SDK is meant to do is meant to help you build rich, dynamic, and personalized user experience using Flutter, and it's meant to help you build flexible user experience. So I decided that what, why not talk about this since this is something that is already being done by Google themselves, right? Who am I? I can't be building something from scratch and then Google has something already and I should just use theirs instead. So apps are evolving. 2010, our applications are tab-based. And then in the 2020s, we started having conversational interface from Siri to Google Chat, I don't know what that's called. And then now in 2024 plus, we have agentic applications. So the next plan is for UI that generates itself. So how can your UI generate itself? How can you build a UI that allows you to not know what the next thing is going to do, but it can decide what the best UI to show is? So take, for instance, now you're building an application for maybe someone that is neurodivergent and for people that are neurotypical. And of course, the UI has to be like a little bit different, right? And the user experience needs to be a little bit different. It means we need to define user experience for both the neurodivergent person and the neurotypical person, in which I don't think anyone wants to go through the stress of having to build from scratch. So having UI that generates itself is what the Gen UI, is coming to solve. So the whole paradigm we have is a developer builds UI and the user consumes the UI. The new paradigm, the reason why I'm writing is because of my time. The new paradigm is the user expresses, and then they express an intent, and then it's your application kind of like generates a UI the user can interact with. So welcome to generative AI, UI rather. So what is generative UI? You know what, let me just make this as engaging as possible and not try to rush this. So what would you guys define as generative UI? Anybody? Generative UI, what I have on the screen. What would you define as that, based off what I've been saying? Not AI, UI. Yeah. It's a UI that generates itself anyways. So what happens is UI components are created on demand, and then it's tailored to the user context and intent, and it is also powered by large language models, which are LLMs. So Flutter just made it possible based off the tweet I just showed you. So they introduced generative UI, which is Gen UI. So Gen UI by definition is generative UI interfaces, and then, or generative user interfaces, and then UI are dynamically created by AI models, and then your widget trees are also generated at runtime, meaning it's not like you are doing like this if and else statement, all your widgets are like generated at runtime. And why did Google build this? Google built this to push Flutter beyond just mobile applications and to enable conversation experiences, a way to bridge the gap between AI and UI, and also a way for your applications to think. So generative UI is only available in Flutter 3.38, which is experimental. It is shipped as highly experimental package, and in order to install it, you need to install the Gen UI package. It requires Flutter 3.38 or higher, and it is not production ready yet, but it is usable because I've been able to explore and build something with it, in which I'm going to demo before my time is up. So what problems does Gen UI solve? Okay, I think this is where I can ask the question. Based on what I've been saying, all right, what do you guys think Gen UI solves? What problem do you think it solves? I think I need more of my Flutter developers at the center. Oh, yeah. What problem do you think Gen UI would solve? Anybody? Oh, all right, thank you. All right, rigidity of user interfaces. So it's going to make UI much more flexible. So anyways, static UI. Yeah, it's going to solve the problem of static UI. You know that thing where you would see like, a lot of flows in a user application? It eliminates the need for pre-building flow and then gives the job to, LLMs to do that for you. And it also enables personalization at US scale, and also it reduces navigation complexity. Another thing it also does is it makes app feel intelligent, and then it increases discoverability. These are kind of like the problem that but we need to get into it. But aside that, right, it also means generative UI would create some problem. Because if you're building something and you don't know what the user is going to see, that means there's going to be a problem because, of course, you can't control what the user sees. You can't control what the user does not see. What are the problem generative UI creates? It creates unpredictable UX. It creates hallucinated UI schemas. It creates rendering failures. And then, of course, it's going to be expensive to run because you're running it under, using LLMs, and you know how expensive it is to use. And then there's also the idea of security. You have little to no control as regards to security. Then debugging problems becomes harder. So the trade-off, you have to decide between control and adaptability. So the normal traditional UI, we have 100% control, and it's not adaptive. But Gen UI, it's constrained control and high adaptability. So where the sweet spot for this is going to be is you define constraints to reduce how creative your AI would be. So let's look at the generative UI architecture. So let's say a user has an intent, and I'm going to show a demo very soon. A user has an intent. It sends it through something called the Gen UI conversation. Then it goes to a content generator, and then it goes to this agent to UI message pipeline, and then it goes to the Gen UI manager, and then it goes through all of this. Of course, we are supposed to talk about each and every one of these, but I don't think we have enough time. But I'm just going to try as much as possible to just run through it. So we have multiple components in our Gen UI system. Like I mentioned, this was just released 3 days ago. I just had to wrap my head around this. We have the catalog system in which I'm going to talk about. So what does the catalog system does? Right. The catalog system, you would see it as a widget vocabulary for AI. So basically what it does is it allows developers to define the widgets you want to allow. And then you have this JSON schema per widget in which I'm going to show you. And then it also allows you to constrain parameter. So just think about it like this AI toolbox for your applications. So let's go briefly to this small code that I worked on a few days ago, say 2 days ago, when I was exploring the SDK. So this is what a Gen UI SDK would look like. This is what a simple Gen UI application would look like. So what this application is meant to do is meant to allow you to is meant to show you different UI based off the data that is being passed into a particular chart, and then it's meant to display different UIs for that. So this is a simple application that I built, right? The idea for this application is for you to just tell it to show me a pie chart. This is like a ChatGPT replica, but of course, maybe smaller. Show me a pie chart of, say, a sample generated expenses rather. A sample generated expenses, and then you send this. You wait for a response. So basically, it generates like a pie chart. You can also come in with your own data. Let's just search Google and say sample expense data. Sample expense data. I just tell ChatGPT to chat.com to generate something for us. So generate a sample expense data in JSON. All right, while that is running, right, basically, we can also tell it to give a table chart of this. Can I get a table version of this? Can I get a table version of this? Okay, so basically what's happening here is we've defined catalog, right? This is what your catalog would look like. Catalog is where you define the kind of widgets that you want to display. So what I've done here is I've defined like what the charts look like, what the table look like, and what the pie chart also look like. And I've passed all of this data into something called a catalog item, and this is where I store the catalog. So it's defined as data analyst catalog. And then in the main part of your UI, in the chart screen, we're using an LLM. We're using Gemini, right, to do this. You are a data analyst assistant. Your goal is to help the user visualize data. When the user provides data or asks for a visualization, use the appropriate widget from the catalog called line chart, pie chart, data table, depending on the situation. So if the user provides raw data, parse it and show it in a table and a chart if possible. Always acknowledge the user's request. Also important, when you generate UI in a response, you must always create a new surface with a unique surface ID. So surface is another component of your generative UI. Yeah, surface is another component of your generative UI. So basically what this does is it prompts, a response is returned, and then it goes to this message controller. The message controller interprets it, and then using the surface ID being returned, renders it on your UI. So basically what renders it is your surface. So before I move forward, does anyone have any specific question? Oh, all right, you. Okay, she needs a mic.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good
My
afternoon.
name is Yusra. I have a question. So does this mean that Gen UI is basically useful only when the user gives some sort of input?
Okay, this is just a use case, right?
Right.
So the user doesn't need to give a sort of input. This is me just defining or showing the flexibility that you can have. You can make your user define what they want, and you can by yourself not give the user the chat box and by yourself enter this prompt and get the data that needs to be gotten. So that's just how it works. Does anyone have any question? Yeah. You need to mic.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm Noel. So basically, given this use case, right?
Yeah.
What kind of since you said it's going to run on giving new UIs,
Yeah.
what kind of design system or what design style? Like, would the user have to create a design style from the start, or like she said, give an input for the design style? Because I'm a product designer,
Okay.
right? So, and from that, is it the same design style that is going to follow?
So as much as we like to call it like generative UI, a lot of those things are still predefined, but with flexibility. So take for instance now, you have like you design a UI for your developer, and you have different users, and you want them to see different stuffs. You want them to see different screens, right? What you can do is you design the screen, or you want them to see different widgets. Let's use widget at a particular instance of the app. Say you want this type of user to see a button here, but you don't want this type of user to see a button here. And you have different parameters for your users. So let's say maybe for age 18, you don't want a user to see this thing. But you don't want to go through the stress. You just want to like tell an LLM to do that for you. So analyze if this user is a child. Don't show this user some part of your application. Don't show this user some type of widget. Don't show this user some type of component. And then your LLM is going to interpret that based off the data you're passing, because of course you have your user's data, based off the data you're passing, and then it's going to give you a response, a UI response based off that. But they are still predefined. So as you can see here, we have a catalog. This is basically a UI, right? This is basically a UI, predefined. But the only thing that is happening here is we are reading data. We are reading data coming directly from the LLM, which is title. We are getting the x-axis label, the y-axis label. We're getting the data points and all of those. But it is still predefined. So it's just you predefining widget and just asking the LLM to just show it for you, and then you're getting like a response. Let me take one final question and just run through something on my slide. Any other person?
Hi, Caesar.
Yeah, all right.
So let us.
Oh, okay. All right then. In that case, I would just round it up. Oh, okay. Okay. So I highlighted some real-world use cases here, right, where you can use generative UI. So let's say your UI is new to your user is new to your application, right? And you want to personalize their onboarding experience based off, say, location. You want to show some things. If this person is in Africa, if this person is new to the country or something like that, you have the ability to use AI to generate personalized onboarding. You can also adapt based on the user role, and then you can easily skip like some steps that are irrelevant. So you can also have build this simple AI-driven booking application, right? Where you can say, book me a hotel in Paris. AI shows different card, and you are not the one managing it. It's just based off. Filters are just done instantly. So the demo showcase was meant to be what I demoed to you guys, by the way. If you want to see other examples of Gen UI, feel free to check out this URL. But this particular code I worked on, I am going to share that on my GitHub right after. Questions? If not, thank you very much for having me.